Welcome to the Disability YODAA podcast. I am the Disability YODAA, Greg Brinkley, and I'm here with a special guest today on this interview. And I really am excited for this one because it is someone that I truly admire, respect. He is a 33-year-old veteran of government work. He has he knows more fraud than he's forgotten more fraud than I could ever learn. I put it that way. He's been a fraud investigator for the IRS, for the Department of Health Services, Department of Health and Human Services. He was a special agent in several of his stops, so he was operating on the highest levels of fraud. And his last position was as the special agent team leader for the Cooperative Disability Investigations Unit in Oakland, California. And how do I know this? He hired me to work with him. This individual is very knowledgeable in fraud circles. He's well connected, and I'm just honored to have him here on the podcast today. So without further ado, I want to introduce to all of you Durrell Mackey. Durrell, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Good to see you, and good
You
to
too.
have you on. Good to have you on the podcast. And I imagine that we're probably going to go down memory lane at some point. So
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for inviting me. I'm so glad to participate in your podcast here this morning.
definitely. All right, so let's go get started. So for those of people, those are the people in the audience viewing this. They really don't know a lot of things about disability fraud, especially who is working in disability fraud and who has done so.
Mhm.
So you having been a special agent for Social Security and for the CDI units, what do the CDI units do? Can you break down for those who are listening who may not ever have heard of CDI, to kind of break down what CDI is?
Okay, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. Well, let me start by talking about the creation of the CDI unit. They were created in 1997. They started with 5 units in Oakland, Atlanta, Baton Rouge, Chicago, and New York. And the goal was to create a front end fraud prevention program to focus on claims that were suspicious, questionable, and the goal was to investigate those claims to determine whether or not they should be, sent on into pay. The units, they consist of, like you said, you're one special agent, two disability termination services analysts, one representative from Social Security Administration, and another individual. I can't think of exactly who that person would be right now. As we talk, I'll remember all of that. But it was a small project, and I remember when I had started, it was kind of interesting in the way I got selected. I remember being out in the field and my boss calling me and saying, "D, hey, I got this thing for you. Congratulations. You're going to be team leader for the Oakland CDI project. And, it's going to be cool for you. It's going to be cool." And I'm going like, What are you talking about? And he said, "Well, D, you've been around for a long time. You're a dinosaur." I said, "What? A dinosaur?" He said, "Oh, D, you know what I mean? You've been around for a while. You know the program. You know how everything works. You're the man. You're the man. You're gonna work over in Oakland. How about that? You be closer to home." And I'm going like, "Yeah, right." All I could think about, I'll get a drink when I get home, a very stiff drink. I don't know what this guy is talking about. But the CDI program is a very important part of SSA administration. When I first began, I'd come from SSA OIG as a special agent. And at that time, I worked a lot of retirement insurance survivor claims. And those claims involve cases like checks after death, beneficiaries who were had died and had repayees, or maybe a husband or wife who were getting checks after the spouse had passed away. And we also worked at some Title II disability cases and also some Title 16 SSI disability cases, in addition to some employee fraud. But the focus was never specifically on disability fraud. And usually, when I was a special agent, it was really, really too late. We were investigating cases where there was an overpayment. And so we would conduct an investigation, of course, interviewing, obtaining records, and presenting the case at the end of the investigation to the U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. So prosecution in that position as a special agent at OIG in San Francisco, that was the goal. The goal here is for CDI, and I hope that your viewers will, excuse me for using acronyms, because in the government we always use acronyms. So I won't be saying cooperative disability investigation. I'll be saying CDI. And so, so the CDI program has started over in Oakland, and I was selected again as a team leader. And I was really kind of anxious about it, because I'm like, well, this stuff failed, it's going to be on me. So I got to get cracking here. I really have a staff, so I got together and got the partners from the DDS and from Social Security and myself, and we all set out to do this wonderful job, which was to investigate suspicious disability claims in both the Title II and Title 16 program. I'm happy to say that of all the 5 units, the Oakland unit, CDI unit, was the most successful of the 5 units. And it led the way and became the brainchild and the model. And so we created a template that we use for all the other 5 units that were involved. So I spent a lot of time on the road training people and just acclimated them into, the whole CDI program. And I learned really quickly, because I'd already done, some disability background cases that had some prosecuted. So I knew the program coming from SSA as a service representative. So I was always involved in analyzing and reviewing cases. So when I got, into the CDI part of SSA's project, it became almost second nature for me. I was, like I said, I was very anxious. I was going like, why me? And so I realized that it was a blessing in disguise, because I loved it when I was there, and I had my own space, my own team. And so, in fact, I did so well until I made, my unit where I left look a little bad. They say, Durrell, quit making us look so bad. And we're like, well, hey, you put me here. What am I going to do?
Right.
So I took a lemon and turned it into lemonade. And
Yeah.
today, there are over 50 CDI units all across the country in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, I think it's really great to hear you speak to how effective you were with the CDI unit there in Oakland, and how what Oakland did actually became, like you said, a model for planting other offices in the country that would in turn do just as well as Oakland in some cases. And it kind of leads me to the next question, because I know that people will wonder, well, I mean, how effective are they really? I mean, are they really saving money, uh, saving our taxpayer dollars? They have all these offices, but how effective are the CDI units in saving tax dollars from people who are trying to commit fraud?
That's a good question, Greg. Actually, looking at Oakland, during the time I was team leader from 1987 to the time I retired in 2009, we had over $120 million in projected cost savings in the Title II and the Title 16 SSI disability program. We had $25 million in projected cost savings in the Medicare and the Medicaid programs. And we also prosecuted multiple disability fraud cases with, working jointly with the Alameda County DA's office in the welfare fraud unit. So we were actually, we hit the ground, running. According to SSA's website, during the last fiscal year of 2022, the CDI program reported nearly $66 million in program cost savings in the Title II and Title 16 program. And they reported nearly $86 million in non-SSA programs, such as the Medicare program, Medicaid, housing assistance, nutrition assistance program. And since the program began in 1997, CDI has contributed to projected savings to taxpayers of approximately $7.9 billion, $4 billion in projected savings to the SSA Title II and Title 16 SSI disability programs, and $3.5 billion in projected cost savings to related federal and state benefit program.
So just for the audience, cost savings is just the idea that they are doing the work on the front end, doing investigations to keep people from getting on benefits, and they have a way of determining what the dollar amount would be that they would save against that person actually getting on benefits. If I understand that correctly.
That's correct. That's correct. The cost savings is primarily the focus, again, like you said, Greg, is on front end prevention. When you're not in the CDI, as a special agent, as a CDI team leader or whatever, then the focus is on prosecution. But in the CDI program, the focus is on stopping the fraud before, those claims go into pay. And that's 100% of the focus. Although we do get cases that are very, very egregious, including multiple false statements. And so we present those cases to the attorney's office. But usually they're declined if there is no dollar loss to the government. There has to be a dollar loss. There has to be a loss in government funds before a prosecutor will, convict, a claimant or a beneficiary. And there were beneficiaries who were prosecuted and convicted for, false statements made, when I worked as a special agent outside of CDI. And there were some, when I went over the CDI as a team leader, we presented, some cases to the Alameda County DA's office. But those cases, they involved the individual getting Title 16 disability payments, as well as defrauding the welfare program. And so we had a, connection and a shared interest in preserving, and that's the mission of Social Security, Greg. The mission of Social Security is to preserve the benefits for those people who are, quote unquote, legitimately, truly disabled. That's always been a mission, and that mission has never changed. It's became more effective now because now we're able to see claims and not just see bad claims, suspicious claims. Claims are very egregious. and not just move those claims into pay.
Yeah, that's great to speak into how there are sometimes crossover from different programs. A person may be trying to get benefits from different programs rather than just one. So it's not that SSA is committing fraud,
Exactly,
but
exactly.
it's almost a situation where they're trying to get what they can get from whatever source that they can get it from.
Sure, sure, of course. And I think you've linked the CDI program to your podcast here, so your viewers can go on and look comprehensively at the role of the CDI and the accomplishments that they've had since they've been part of SSA since 1997. Um, there was a large Social Security disability fraud case that happened in 2017, the largest in Social Security's history. And I'll talk about that a little bit. It involved, and that's also is linked on your, your podcast, and so your viewers can take a look at that particular case. But in a nutshell, what it involved was an individual who had been a SSA disability attorney representing claimants in their claims for disability benefits. And he had actually worked for SSA for a number of years, over 20 years, representing disability claimants. And so he concocted a scheme to defraud Social Security by uh, hiring a former ALJ. I'm sure your viewers know what the ALJ means. An ALJ is an administrative law judge. So he hired an administrative law judge, and he hired a doctor to help facilitate the fraud. The ALJ's role was to present doctored medical records that were signed by the other co-conspirator, the doctor who the disability attorney had hired. The three of them all got together and they concocted a scheme to nearly get close to 1,700 claimants and beneficiaries on the rolls who otherwise would not be on there, if it had not been for fraud. And so the SSA disability attorney was paying the administrative law judge $10,000 a month during the scheme. And the SSA attorney had received more than $5.7 million in fees that from SSA that was based upon the fraudulent claims. And as a result of the scheme between he and his co-conspirators, they obligated the SSA to pay more than $550 million in lifetime benefits to claimants for these fraudulent submissions. And that was the biggest case that I think they've ever had in the CDI program. And it was a case that was partnered between, co-investigated, jointly investigated between SSA, IRS, DHS, and so they all got together with their resources in health services. They all got together with their resources, and they eventually ended up convicting all three of the individuals. The DDS, the disability SSA attorney, the former SSA ALJ, and the doctor who was responsible for writing the fraudulent medical reports and reports being submitted to the Social Security for fraudulent payment. And in the end, the individual who created the scheme was convicted, and he was sentenced to 27 years in prison along with his co-conspirators. And at the time of sentencing, rather than stay in the country to carry out his sentence that was leveled against him, he fled the country to Honduras. And so he had to be chased. And so, investigators chased him over there, apprehended him, arrested him, and brought him back. He was extradited to the U.S. and
Wow.
he brought him back, and he eventually is incarcerated, today. That's the biggest case that CDI has had. And I feel as though I'm responsible a little bit for that because being one of the founders of CDI and the architects of the program, I feel when I realized that happened, I said, wow, here it was, years ago when I was selected to do this work. And I'm going like, oh, wow, what are they doing to me? What in the world is going on here? And turn around, the biggest case came from something that I created. And
Yeah.
so it gives me a lot of satisfaction. I would have not even known that, unless you had invited me to come on your show and talk about, my work as a CDI team leader. And I said, wow, it's amazing that, that happened. I'm glad to be still around here to be able to see that happen. And
Yeah.
so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And it really is something that I knew about this case. I think the guy's name is Eric Kahn.
Yes.
And I had no idea CDI was involved. So that just adds another layer to it. So that is really incredible. And it's also reassuring that CDI is really on the job getting things done on the ground level and on the front end before people get into pay.
Yes, of course.